Let's talk about using Flexbox properties. Flexbox properties are placed in our CSS file that allow us to control the appearance of our page using box structure. The box structure has a horizontal layout by default, but we can manipulate them to display how we want by using a combination of properties. We start with an HTML page containing a head, title, body, header, section, and other elements for a basic display. We also have a reference to the CSS file where we will place the Flexbox properties. In our CSS, we have selectors with properties that have already been added. Selectors include body, nav, header, and footer. Also, properties that affect the display include font family to define page fonts, background color to define the colors, and padding to set the spacing within elements. We will dive deeper into different styles in a different lesson, but for now, we'll use these to help us see the effects Flexbox properties can have. Our current styles make our web page appear normal. Let's see what happens when we apply Flexbox properties. To use Flexbox on our page, we start with the required Display Flex property. We can add it to different selectors in our file, but for now, we add it to be used for the section. This tells the browser to use Flexbox for this element only. Save the changes. When we look at the results in our browser, the default direction displays the content in a row. Otherwise, we can specify the direction by using flex direction and set it to row reverse, row, column, or column reverse. Later in the video, we will change this direction to column, but for now, let's keep it in the default row direction. Notice our content currently sits tightly side by side. The default for Flexbox is no wrap, so the elements will sit side by side and can give a compressed appearance. To have our content wrap to the next line, we use the Flex Wrap property and set it to wrap or wrap reverse. Here we will use wrap. We now see a difference in the layout where the content fills from left to right, then automatically wraps to the next line. Another property, Justify Content, allows us to apply positioning for the element content on the page main axis, the axis extending from left to right. Let's use Space Around. This applies even spacing before, between, and after each box element. Save again. We can now see even spacing is applied. It is more visible for the single item, but even spacing is indeed applied to each element displayed on the section. There are different values that can be applied to the Justify Content property. One example here is Flex End. This moves content to the end or right side of the container. When we look at the browser and refresh the page, the content is moved to the right. We can also achieve different layouts using Flex Start, Center, Space Between, and Space Evenly. Let's return and restore our Space Around and add another property. As mentioned previously, Flex Direction allows us to choose the direction of the content. Just for fun, we can set it to column to see what it does. Save the changes again. When we refresh the browser, the content will change to display as a column. Here too, we can achieve different layouts using column reverse, row, and row reverse. Let's add another property. The Align Item property allows us to align content to the page cross-axis, the axis extending from top to bottom. In this case, let's align the content to the center. Save changes once again, and we see our content has been moved to the center of the page. We can also change the value to use Flex Start and Flex End. In our case, we can leave as center. As mentioned, Flexbox properties allow us to control the appearance of our page using box structure. We start with the required Display Flex property that creates a container for a specified selector. We should note that when we add the Flexbox property to a selector, the property will affect only what is inside the container. In our case, it is the section. The box structure has a horizontal layout by default, but it can be manipulated to display in different ways. We can also apply properties to elements within the container as well. We use a combination of properties including, but not limited to, Flex Wrap, Justify Content, Flex Direction, and Align Items to display our page. Remember to explore these and other Flexbox properties to see what they do. Thank you for watching.